Mike, how's it going?
Dude, it's going good. How things going with you?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Life is real good,
A lot
actually.
has changed.
Oh yeah, what?
Well, we are permanently living in Santa Barbara right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A travel life that turned,
We
permanent
also brought beers
because
to
of
the
COVID.
occasion.
Nice. Well, what's in Santa Barbara? What are you guys doing right now?
So, do you want to take that?
Yeah, actually, we both got jobs almost immediately from getting here. So if you remember when we left Kaiser for the rotation, we came down here on a whim, just didn't have really anything. I was hoping to start up Luna a little bit. Luna didn't come through, and so Allie ended up finding a job within 2 weeks at a skilled nursing facility.
Mm-hmm.
And then that gave me a little bit of a buffer to be able to kind of search and look for the right thing. And yeah, it turns out then I landed a really amazing gig that's with part-time with a classic outpatient physical therapy clinic, just doing outpatient ortho, and then part-time with more of a hybrid training facility that has like a medical approach to it. And so we can talk a little bit about that later, but it's a pretty awesome gig, and the goal is to eventually slowly transition full time to that. So we're both just all of a sudden now living in Santa Barbara, having a great time.
That's amazing. I mean, I know when everything kind of hit the fan in March, it was. I know I was kind of like freaking out. I was like, I had no idea where I was gonna go. And then you guys said you were bouncing. I was like, all right. And so it was kind of crazy. And I'm surprised you guys found something so quickly.
Yeah, it was honestly, I think the stars just kind of aligned for us and we got super lucky. But it worked out well. And it's just funny because everyone says whenever you're traveling, everyone's like, oh, you're gonna bounce around until you find a place that you want to stay. And we were like, not gonna be us. We're gonna keep traveling. And
we had a plan the whole time.
Yeah.
We were gonna travel for 18 months. We almost had general location figured out for almost all of it, knowing we were gonna end up in North Carolina. And sure enough, here we are now.
Yeah, I was gonna say you guys had this grand scheme. I feel like the last time I talked to you, and now you're all are just chilling in Santa Barbara.
Have you ever been here? You would probably want to chill here too.
No, I'm obviously still in San Jose, so I still love it here. It's pretty great.
Welcome to come down and visit, man. It's a great time. We got to get back up to the Bay.
I know. We just have to wait for COVID.
Yeah, friends are getting married, I think, in the Bay soon. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm my birthday's coming up in a month, and I was actually gonna go down to San Diego. So maybe on my way down, I could stop and see you guys too. That'd be pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Let us know.
So, Allie, why don't we get into more of what you do? And obviously, you started in the beginning of COVID. When was the first time maybe you saw a COVID patient? And then we can maybe start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am currently working in a skilled nursing facility that is here in Santa Barbara. It's located actually within a retirement community. So I also provide Med B services to the patients who live there in the independent living facility apartment. So they're completely independent. So providing outpatient home health type services for them. And then I also do the skilled nursing facility.
So the biggest difference between B and normal would be independent living versus in the nursing home itself, for those who don't know.
Yep. And we do see patients under Medicare Part B who are long-term care patients in the nursing facility. We'll pick them up for bouts of therapy. So, but other than that, we do have a smaller caseload, but a caseload of subacute rehab, getting the patients hopefully home to their prior level of function and their prior living after any type of medical occurrence. So with it being a retirement community and a skilled nursing facility, we have been on pretty extreme lockdown, no visitors. Since June, I've been tested weekly for COVID.
Wow. And how many times have they touched your brain?
Oh my God, too many to count. Too many to count. I'm like used to it now, so
Right.
that's
Well,
that's
last time I got a COVID test, it wasn't too bad. They kind of just did the outside. It wasn't really, they didn't go to as like, it wasn't as bad.
yeah. We have like our nurses do it on staff, and so there's like certain ones who you just know not to go to because they really stick it up there, and then there's other ones that are like more gentle. Um, so yeah, we actually were very thankfully lucked out, I guess is kind of a bad term, but we worked diligently to be strict with everything, and we were able to prevent any COVID patient cases up until actually we had our first like quote unquote outbreak at our facility the beginning of the new year. It was like right at the new year.
It was crazy that you were able to like truly I remember you saying that you were like you guys were working real hard, you were considered like one of the best in the state, and so it was pretty surprising that it even lasted like 6 months, more than that, before your first case.
Yeah, and the good thing is that when we did have an outbreak, we were able to like immediately like put into play like the right actions to contain it.
And Santa Barbara's pretty separate from everywhere else, is it? Am I wrong? Like it's kind of like maybe not so much, or
yeah, I mean
it definitely is like it's not the numbers have been like increasing significantly. Like my skilled nursing facility follows the percentage of COVID cases in Santa Barbara County, and that's like based on some of our protocols and like restrictions. So like whenever we were above, the county's above 15%, then we have to be tested twice a week.
Okay.
So we just came below that. I think Santa Barbara County, when I last heard, was like 13% are testing positive, which is still.
Now, you guys considered like part of the Los Angeles County? Like I know, well, like in California, for those who don't know, everyone's kind of like blocked off into different sections, whether you're like the Bay Area or Los Angeles or like up north or wherever. And were you guys kind of roped into that Los Angeles County area?
Yeah, and I guess like also we're kind of considered like Central Coast.
Central Coast, but Southern California.
Yeah.
Because we've been following most of LA's like laws, and whenever Santa Barbara County makes a specific, indication, we'll hear about it. But yeah, we've been kind of just following their lead. We've been in code purple for
forever.
Yeah. It's either code purple, and then we just got off the restrictions, the stay-at-home restrictions, like you guys obviously did. So
yeah. And then so back to that COVID patient, you guys restricted it pretty well. It's pretty,
yes.
low key.
So our first COVID patient, it was a patient who came from the hospital. So we're assuming he was exposed at the hospital, which at that time, the hospital, like ICU numbers were really increasing with the holidays. And so we had, I think within like a couple of days, we had like 4 patients test positive. And anyone who was potentially exposed patient wise was like put immediately into quarantine. And I think all in all, we had about like 6 patients who ended up testing positive, and they immediately went into a COVID unit, basically like blocked off area of rooms that were designated for people who were COVID positive.
Yeah.
And like the nurse who's in there's like a nurse and a CNA in there treating those patients. And then like I would see the COVID patients that were on caseload. So I'd have to treat all my other patients and then go into the COVID unit, do my PPE, and leave straight from there. And
were you ever like nervous?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I was like, all right,
like being the person.
Make sure I'm doing all these steps exactly, correct. And it's, yeah, I mean, but I see how that PPE can help and can literally make a difference. And prevent that, exposure. So
Yeah, and you said I know you said you didn't see many COVID like during the time of COVID, but did you see anyone like maybe recovering from post hospitalization?
yes, we've had a couple who have come, like typically they aren't directly coming to us with that
Like
diagnosis.
post-COVID.
Yeah, but there's typically something else. Like we recently had a patient who, and we're just now seeing that more,
Yeah.
I would say. Not as much last year, but we currently have a patient who ended up having to have a pacemaker put in. Um, and she had COVID about a month ago, and she still has lingering symptoms and potentially, like, potentially some of those symptoms may have exacerbated her heart condition, leading to her needing the pacemaker. So, but she's luckily recovering well, which is great.
Yeah, I have one patient who I'm seeing them in their home, and they had COVID, and took him for a loop, but thankfully survived and everything. But as of even the family members, when I talk to them, they're not the same. Their actions aren't the same. They don't, not that they don't move as right, but they're just not as motivated as they used to, and it just really took a lot out of them essentially, and maybe wouldn't have been in the same spot if not have ever gotten it beforehand.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that it has a significant effect. And it's interesting the population that I have, because a lot of my patients that I'm seeing are honestly 80 years plus.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like, oh, this is a young patient if they're like 78.
I
um,
know.
so like I'm seeing like some of our COVID patients who had it. We had a couple that we lost. They declined because of COVID, and they were all like 95 plus years old. So it just, it's kind of different getting like someone who is in a skilled nursing facility at like requiring a significant amount of assistance with activity and mobility, and having them deal with post COVID versus someone who's getting back to like day-to-day life of, a physical, human, versus someone who needs to be able to get to, on and off the toilet and that kind of stuff. So
Walk
it's
to
just
lunch, like.
their goals, and what they do. But
Yeah, no, it is interesting, and again, obviously, most of the people who are having a hard time are with older, thankfully, and obviously, and glad we're not seeing people who are like in their 40s and 50s who are like struggling with this, because that would be quite cumbersome.
absolutely.
And what about you, Anthony? What are you? And you said you're an outpatient, right?
Yeah, completely.
And are you seeing anybody who's had COVID, or are you mostly seeing a general basic caseload?
In the last couple of months, I haven't really had much experience with the direct post-COVID patient. A lot of it initially, even from an outpatient standpoint, like you're saying, all the 40, 50-year-olds for the most part are healthy. So if they are getting it, where they have to fill out a waiver that says whether or not they've been exposed to within the last couple of days, and then whether they've had it or not, had a test. And so they've, for the most part, the people who are coming in have either had it and been post quarantine, and then they're just recovering without much complications, or we're just not seeing them. And we're not naive in the sense that it could be potentially around, but yeah, most of our clients are really just healthy. I just had I think a 15-year-old kid today who said, I hadn't seen him in a couple of weeks, and he said, sure enough, that he had it. He just felt a little gassed. Obviously, we're seeing a lot more of this kind of like post-COVID return to sport guideline that's been coming out, and so we're just following that a little bit closer. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought to think of how it's affecting people who may not be having such large functional impairments like Allie's patients, but still coming down with around some form of issue.
Yeah, I think the post-COVID stuff is going to be interesting. Like, I've read some stories about some kids not being able to be basically not having a senior year, so that they're not getting drafted or not being like scouted by any like athletes and stuff like that. And I have one kid, he's younger, and he had a patellar relocation, and basically same protocol as ACL. And he's had all this time off, and like thankfully, I'm there to help him get back to like fitness and working out and getting back into a normal program. But I'm wondering what it's going to be like post COVID with some of these athletes, and like maybe coaches bringing them back into some aggressive like conditioning stuff too soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, think about it from like an outpatient standpoint, especially if you're getting people who are coming in for a specific referral, a specific body region. If you're still stuck with the standard 30 minutes, even 60-minute visits with them, how much of that do you want them to be just cardiovascular conditioning, and how much do you want them to actually be working on the potential issue at hand? Obviously, the longer time you have, the more you're willing to adjust that accordingly. But the outpatient clinic I'm at, you're seeing people for 30 minutes, and you really don't want them working with an aide and staying longer than they have to, just because then numbers start increasing. So
Right.
you have 4 or 5 therapists working, and it's still a relatively big gym. We've got to kind of cut it off to be like, hey, you can do a lot of this at home. You should go do that. But yeah, it makes a good point of how much cardiovascular conditioning we should actually be doing.
Yeah. And how many patients are you seeing like a day typically, or like within an hour?
So my part-time, I'm seeing one every 30 minutes. So 20 hours, I'm seeing someone about 7 a day. And
Okay.
then, and then on the training side, it's a membership model, so they can come whenever they want. But we're probably looking at them a little bit more looser than, a client or a patient right in front of you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's good. It sounds like you have aides that help you.
Yeah.
That's dope. Well, you guys are in Santa Barbara, and so why don't we start from more of like kind of the beginning of like where you guys started out, and let's start about where you guys both went to school, and then basically, what were both of your mindsets? Like, what did you guys want to do when you were in PT school?
Sure.
All right. So Allie and I met in physical therapy school. She was a year below me. When I was the second year, she got in to the University of Pittsburgh. That's where we went. So I had full intention of kind of just making it out of PT school and kind of seeing whatever happens, happens. And sure enough, that's where we met, fell in love. And then kind of right out of the gate was a lot of different scenarios. Now that, Allie will tell you probably more, but I couldn't make up my mind a little bit of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. I knew that private practice and opening up a practice or being entrepreneurial in some sense was kind of exactly where I was going. It was just in what form of entry was the question.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, and then we knew that we were going to continue our relationship and keep spending time together, I went into travel physical therapy for the first 8 months, or those 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back, and then I waited and lived with her for the last 3 months of her program before she graduated. And so that's where I started traveling and got the travel bug a little bit, seeing the benefits of kind of all that. Was able to save for the engagement ring. And
you were in Texas, and you got like experience doing home health and skilled nursing.
Yeah, what was that like in Texas? I remember you telling me that you were kind of driving in the middle of nowhere.
Man, you learned a lot. So
yeah.
as a new grad and then a travel therapist, some of those recruiters, they're just biting at the bits to just kind of take advantage of you if you're not asking the right questions. So I learned that pretty quickly when I got to Texas, that I didn't ask enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up driving for home health. I ended up driving about 600 miles a week. It was just long days.
Wow.
And, eventually I made it through that rotation and got into skilled nursing, which became a lot easier because I knew kind of how to ask a little bit more of those questions, keep it close to where I lived.
Yeah.
And,
did it make it easier for you, Allie, to like make a decision to do travel after? Is that kind of where your head was at?
Well, interestingly enough, I never thought that travel PT was like my thing. I was like, I don't think that like, picking up and moving or just switching jobs like that would be like something that I would be a good fit for me. I think seeing kind of just like the flexibility of it with him, it definitely is. And I just think more and more people have been doing it and knowing we're a couple, and you know, if we're gonna do it anytime, now's the time to do it. When we are just like, you know, a couple years out of school looking for that experience and still kind of trying to like figure it out and get grounded.
But we never, I mean, I never planned on kind of, I mean, I was okay with going back to travel, but when I moved back to Pittsburgh for her graduating, we planned on going to Delaware at that point, is when I got into the orthopedic residency at the University of Delaware.
First things first with the residency.
And so then after the residency, that's when Allie had her job. She'd been there for a year and she just said, you know, I don't really want to just change jobs exactly like that. And so we stayed in Delaware for 2 full years before we decided to travel again.
So what made you apply in Delaware?
I knew that I needed to learn more. I just, you know, you get out of PT school and you just, I had a really good, like almost subspecialization right out of the gate, because in Pittsburgh, your entire third year of PT school is a clinical. It's either a full 12 months or 6 months and 6 months. And so one of my 6 months was with one of the best back specialists in Pittsburgh, Shane Conley, and he just taught me so much. And so I felt really good coming out of outpatient ortho, 6 months with a really good, you know, sense of how to deal with the spine. But then I was like, well, what happens with shoulders and knees and everything else? And being the fact that I wanted to open up my own practice one day, I just figured, how can I be a generalist without feeling general? So that's where the orthopedic residency came to mind. And then I had some connections of trying to get me in the door, at least at the University of Delaware. Got the interview, and it turned out to work out perfectly. It was just a perfect match.
Sweet. And then Allie, what are you doing at this point? So he's going through the residency where I'm sure like your mindset is just like getting any kind of practice.
Totally. Yes. We moved to Delaware and I didn't have my job yet. So I graduated in May and then in April, and then we moved there in May. So I started applying, and I didn't have a license, a physical therapy license for Delaware, but I was applying for jobs in Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey because we were so close to all those states there.
That's honestly one of the craziest things about living in California is you can drive 6 hours, you know, still be in the middle of California. Whereas within 4 hours, you could just be in 5 different states in Delaware.
Yeah. So and it was kind of nice to have a little bit of a break after PT school, just to kind of get grounded in our new place and everything. At this point, we were engaged, so I also was starting to like plan the wedding, so that was a fun time. But I ended up applying for a job in Philadelphia at Moss Rehab. And I applied for an outpatient position where they had it was kind of a split between ortho and neuro. So I thought that would be a good fit for me because I had more of an interest in neuro within school, and that's where I really focused all of my clinicals, which was awesome experience. But I wanted to make sure that I also, like, coming out as a new grad, was more well-rounded and not just like pigeonholing myself into one area. And it was a really great job to start out at. It was a huge clinic, so there was a lot of like opportunities for mentorship with clinicians who had been there for several years, or just even they had a lot of different people coming through. So as a new grad, it was a good experience to have that kind of just like ability to collaborate with coworkers. Yeah.
Yeah, make
So
mistakes early on. I think that's really like when you first get out of PT school, you're like, I can't make a mistake. Like this rehab process has to go 100% well. And then like, you have one person who comes in and their pain's never going away no matter how hard you try. And you're like, well, I don't know.
yeah, and you realize like it's not anything that you're doing wrong. Like
Right. Yeah.
you're providing them the most, the best care education that you can. But sometimes it isn't, straightforward in like the textbook,
At some point, you just can't teach that. You have to just experience it.
Yeah. So I also good thing about that job was that I was able to do pick up extra shifts in inpatient rehab, and they had a really awesome like one of like the renowned rehab facilities throughout the nation. So that was also like an awesome learning experience for me to work with patients who had traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries. We had, a prosthetic lab that we could, work with, and it was really awesome. There was a lot of just experience there.
Is it kind of a general, is it like a hospital where you have outpatient and then you did acute, or did you like do the acute on the weekends? Like as a,
I would do the acute on the weekends.
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a really good experience. I was working a lot. I was commuting like an hour each way.
Love it.
Which was tough. So yeah, I got a little burnt out on that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you haven't, kind of realized it by then, that's when we were like, we're pretty big generalists right now. We have experience in so many different settings, and we're feeling already a little burnt out, like the residency, 14, 15, like 13, 14 hours a day for those 14 months. And so, by that point, we were just like, all right, let's try to something new. And we didn't really know, we knew we didn't quite want to settle down just yet. And so we figured, all right, let's travel.
If
let's
we don't do
it.
it now, we won't ever do it. So
yeah.
then we decided to travel.
Do you feel, before we kind of get into your travel, do you feel like it's something common maybe with your other friends who started out of PT school when they're almost like trying to play catch up, where they get out of school and they go through this process of like, okay, I need to do an outpatient job, but I also need to do acute, or they're just trying to pick up as many hours as they can. So they're trying to like just play catch up. And I almost feel like a lot of students now are like coming out of school and they're just putting in so much work. And it's like, we're not that you shouldn't be putting in so much work, but like, I feel like there's almost like this common trend where people are putting in so much extra time after PT school to like pay for it and just kind of figure out what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I definitely see that amongst like peers of mine to an extent. I also think that a lot of people like that I went to school with, which is really awesome, are like, I feel like a lot of people I went to school with kind of like knew what they wanted to do, and it's been cool to see them kind of flourish in that area via like social media or just like our school's Facebook page, where like you occasionally like catch up with people. But I think there's kind of a, like a mix of wanting to, I think there's such a, right now, I think there's such a drive towards specialization with the residency programs that some people feel like they need experience and everything, but I do think that a lot of people like know what they want and are kind of like going more down that specialty route than ever.
Do you feel like Pittsburgh kind of prepared you to be, because my point maybe was more of, do you think that that PT schools are trying more or less, I know Pittsburgh's probably, I think they're top like 5 in the nation for PT schools, but that other PT schools may not be preparing their students for the real world. Rather, they're just getting them ready for the boards, and they're not maybe getting the clinical skills they need, because when they get out, they're like, okay, well, what am I doing here? I have this person's knee hurts, but they came in here crying, but they're not really like, their knee hurts, but it's also because their family member died, or like the secondary stuff. Do you think that do you think PT schools are preparing kids enough, and do you feel like there should be more done maybe in PT school that they need to learn about those other secondary things?
I think, yeah, I think Pitt Hail to Pitt. Yeah, number one, actually. I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't usually say it often, but you set me up there. Hail
Yeah.
to Pitt, number one. And I think Pitt really did a good job of preparing us for a
Mhm.
lot of those conversations. I've had students from 3 or 4 different programs. So I know they're doing a better job of teaching the variables and the biopsychosocial side of things. And um, so I feel a little biased because the psychologically induced or psychologically informed physical therapy practice that's kind of like been Pitt's one of like bigger pushes in the last few years of really
Mhm.
understanding, the person in front of you. And so I think that we're getting better at it. I actually really like how social media is bringing different viewpoints and different ways of thinking about clinical reasoning to the masses. And so I'm like seeing SPTs, future physical therapists, current physical therapists, new grads, all kind of starting to think outside of the box, which I think is only getting us further away from just the sheer pathoanatomical approach.
Yeah, I agree. And when you said that your final year of PT school is kind of like subspecialized, I thought that was like amazing. I remember talking to my other classmates, and that's what we wanted to do. But we had thankfully a lot of clinical time at Buffalo. We had a year's worth of clinical time, but there was times where I was kind of like, well, why am I doing this? I really have no interest in doing this post, school. I not it wasn't more or less the curriculum. It was more of we had to do a setting in acute, subacute, and then ortho. But then anything else after that, you can do what you want. But when I was in the subacute, it was like bashing my head against the wall. It was the worst for me anyway. I just didn't find it wasn't what I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I think it would have been beneficial maybe from a last year perspective, be like, okay, I want to focus on ortho, or I want to focus on concussion, or I want to focus on whatever,
Mhm. Yeah, and I like in PT school, like I never actually had an acute care setting. Like
Wow.
I've actually never had an acute care experience, which was a little bit of a challenge with travel because, most jobs want experience in that
Yeah.
setting. Um, but yeah, we were able to kind of go down more of a like specialized approach with our clinicals at Pitt, which I think was really beneficial, especially for like we had the year-long clinical was our third year, but throughout our didactic curriculum, our first and second year, we always had part-time clinicals. So we just had like so much clinical time and experience, and then being able to spend a full year in the clinic, um, 2 6-month rotations, like we were able to get up to the point of carrying a full caseload, which is like difficult to do as a as a SPT or a new grad. So I think more experience is just key for that, improving that confidence when you're coming out, and I do think that Pitt did a good job with that in that regard. But
Yeah, and it definitely differs from area to area. When I was in Buffalo, when I first started out there, my patient caseload, I mean, it was like 2, 3, sometimes 4 patients an hour. And now that I'm out here, I'm just seeing patients one-on-one, and it's so much better. But like, I didn't know that existed up until the point where I decided to move.
yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, back to you traveling. You guys are in Delaware. You're both generalists. You're looking like, all right, there's nothing ahead of us but time and whatever the heck we want to do. What are your guys' next steps?
Move, pack
Move.
up. So
Yeah,
yeah, at this point
we were just kind of like, where do we want to go, and we just started like brainstorming and just trying to get like an idea of where it might be fun to go hang out. Our dog just entered the room, and I know, but he's jumping up here. So we just talked about like different places. It'd be cool to live, in the Pacific Northwest. It'd be cool to go out to California. When else would we live in California? We of course wanted to do like Colorado, which was there was no jobs in Colorado.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we decided let's try to do the Pacific Northwest. So we looked into Washington and we looked into Oregon, and getting a physical therapy license was pretty quick and easy in Oregon. So we were like, let's do it. So yeah,
we'd gotten married by then, so we had to bring all of our things that we registered for everything. We had to kind of pick the things that they say, like, you're gonna want this forever, you better choose the right things. And so then we were like, okay, well, what are we gonna do with all this? So we had to put it all in storage. So like we even still at this point don't have any of our stuff that we're like, we want our things. We
learned to live minimalistically.
We packed one full car's worth of items.
Just one car.
One car.
Right.
I had a second car, and we got that shipped all the way over from Delaware to Oregon. Meanwhile, Allie and I U-hauled all of our stuff down from Delaware to North Carolina, and then ventured with our one car all the way over. It was we ended up doing a 2-week trip.
Yeah, it was, obviously pre-COVID, so super fun time to travel. We bopped around to different locations, visiting with friends and everything.
Charlotte, Chicago, Denver. We stayed a night in Salt Lake City, and then Bend, Oregon, before we made it all the way over to Eugene.
Yeah. So, Anthony, actually, I was still working, or no, I don't remember exactly, but we were finishing up our jobs in Delaware, and we both started applying for travel jobs, and he was the first one that,
because I had all that, the experience of just about every setting.
And when Anthony was a resident at the University of Delaware, on the weekends so I guess this goes back to trying to work as much as possible. On the weekends,
I didn't actually ever stop that. New grads, you want to work as much as possible. I just kept doing it.
He's still working as much as possible, but he worked home health on the weekends, on the side, just for extra money. But of course, that's then good experience for travel. So if someone is looking to potentially travel, it's not a bad idea to try to pick up some PRN hours in different settings just to get that experience.
Yeah, it seems like you guys definitely got a lot of experience before you got your feet wet and jumping in as a new grad.
Yeah. We always talk about when we were, talking about where we wanted to travel and kind of what some of our priorities were. We always say that when you are traveling as a physical therapist or, any profession, likely that there's 3 things to consider: your location, the setting, and the pay.
Salary,
how much you're going to get paid. And you hit the jackpot if you get all 3, but more likely than not, you're going to have to compromise and prioritize some versus others. And so we kind of took that into consideration, and we prioritized the location and the pay over the setting. We're we'll just get experience wherever we go.
And what setting did you guys go with when you were in Oregon?
So Anthony initially got a job in a skilled nursing facility, and he took it kind of jumped on the first opportunity.
Go to Oregon.
Yeah, jumped on the first opportunity. And then whenever actually we were driving through the middle of Idaho, I think you probably drove 75% of that trip. And of course, I'm driving for the one time.
Yeah, the third time this whole time.
Yeah, and I get a call for an interview for a job.
Get out.
I'm driving right now, but
I'm in the middle of Idaho.
I'll call you back.
There was nothing. You look to the right, you look to the left. There was nothing. So we were just we even talked about an emergency action plan if you get a call. And sure enough, she gets the call, and I'm like, pull over. She's like, shut up.
I know, yeah. I was stop talking. And so I had my entire interview while I was driving going like 70 miles per hour on the freeway.
You mean you pulled the car over to a slow, steady stop, and you had an interview on the side of the road?
Yes.
In case any cops are listening.
But it worked out because I got the job.
Nice. That's awesome.
So that was actually in an outpatient clinic.
Okay.
And I saw primarily ortho, but they did treat vestibular patients there, which is one of my specialties. So that was really awesome that I was able to get some experience treating the vestibular population in Oregon. So we did classic 13 weeks there.
Nice. And how'd you find your recruiter? Like, how'd you guys get out there? I know sometimes it's, when I first typed in like travel therapy, you get like 30,000 travel things and you're like, all right, who's actually going to give me money and like not going to fall through? Cause I've heard some pretty terrible horror stories.
Yeah. So luckily by that point, I had already traveled. So I learned a lot of the first go around and I was sure I wasn't going to make another mistake. And I reached back out to my previous recruiter. We really had a good relationship. We ended on good terms. And so I reached back out to him and he had already kind of been promoted at that point. And he gave me a contact information at his company to try to work. But he was pretty realistic in the sense that, if someone a recruiter gets you a better job that we don't have, we're okay with it. Take it. You find that you can work with some really good people in the industry and some really sleazy people in the industry. But the recruiter who ended up setting us up, she was like one of those cold calls that just kind of worked out nicely. Yeah.
So it worked out well.
Yeah, because I remember sitting kind of like over our Delaware countertop. And I remember kind of just going back and forth and being like, we've got a couple of job opportunities. Like, let's see what happens. And then
it's so stressful. I will go out there and say that for someone like me, who I typically like to plan things, it was good pushing me out of my comfort zone because it's stressful. You're like, I'll have a job like until you really start applying for jobs that actually will have the start date that you need like a month before. It's like a lot of like hurry up and wait. And
well, the worst part is like you don't even have a license in that state to practice sometimes, and you're just like, okay, well, can I have the job? And they're like, yeah, sure. And like, okay, now I got to get a license. Now I got to figure out how I got to move. And when my stuff's going to go that way, my car's going to go that way. And it's kind of crazy.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Literally.
Oh my God.
But yeah, but I will say, I would encourage people to do it. I think it's like an awesome experience. And I'm not like just a super go with the flow person. I try to be, but I like having things planned out, and I think it's a good, challenge.
Yeah, right up until this point, we really kind of latched on to onto the phrase of like, it'll all work out. Like it always works out. And I think that was kind of, especially Allie's, but kind of our first step was like around that kitchen table, kind of thinking about like, all right, let's just go for it. And then her especially being able and being willing to move across the country without even a job. I think really we kind of held on to that up until now. Like it still has all worked out great. And so we can't deny that.
Yeah. I think if you're like persistent enough and you are flexible, like we've had the ability to be flexible, like you can find a job within this field. Like that, it just shows that like physical therapy is needed,
Yeah, and I think some people go into it thinking like I was one of those people who went into it thinking like I need to do this, I need to be there, and I need to do this thing because I'm a pretty big planner as well, and so I was like I need to be in California or I need to be someplace warm, and it needs to be outpatient, And I think having that flexibility was something you definitely have to learn and be open to, certainly early on. Yeah. So now you guys are both in Oregon, and you don't have any of your stuff. And one of you is an outpatient, one of you is in a subacute facility. What's it like? And when you guys are both doing 13-week contracts, you said?
Yes.
And do we like where we work, or are we just not a fan?
Honestly,
we both have got some good stories.
We loved Oregon.
We did love it there.
It was just, I personally thought it was one of the best places. I mean, the pines, the pine tree kind of outline across everywhere you go. My work, skilled nursing facility is
clearly
exactly
we were there
what it
for the
is.
location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it was. But like, I had an hour drive and I even enjoyed it. It was just really calming. And it was kind of a really great way for both of us to kind of figure it all out together. Like, we have hobbies, but it was a completely new environment, location. And so, we really latched on to yogi, to finding the dog parks, finding hikes and different ways of just spending time together.
Yeah, I think that like something we also really loved about traveling was that we knew where we were was where we were staying was temporary. And so like that forced us to want to like see everything we could see there and really explore, and kind of got us like that drive to get out and see more things and do more things, which was awesome. And then from a job standpoint, I think it was a pretty easy transition for me because I had come from an outpatient. I actually wasn't prioritizing outpatient, and it was just the job that fell into my hands, which was like, this is pretty rare for travel. So it probably would have been a better fit for Anthony, but he was already set up at the skilled nursing facility. So
I was gonna say, you guys had like opposite roles there, where she picked up the outpatient, you got the subacute, and you guys were just like, oh well, I guess we're here.
Yes, which is great. Like now, because I'm obviously much more comfortable in my job. I've been there about like 9 months, but starting out, I also had never spent a significant amount of time in a skilled nursing facility or ever thought that I would.
Outpatient experience.
Yeah.
So you were able to do that.
Yeah, and he's always a good reference with his experience. So.
Yeah, so it was nice. Yeah, every Saturday or every weekend we planned out when we got there. It was fun. We just kind of like looked at the future weekends and said, all right, here are the places we want to go. Let's plan that out a little bit more. Let's flesh it out and see how we can get up to Seattle, how we can go to Portland. Do we want to do that in the same weekends? And so we got to see a lot of Oregon and even like the northern part of California briefly. And so that was the first real good taste of like, yes, this is what traveling should be. Not 600 miles in the desert of Texas,
Texas is the worst. I've had the pleasure of driving from Houston to Tucson, and that was I drove 10 hours straight and was still inside of Texas.
Just going nowhere.
Yeah, just literally 90 miles an hour, looking around at nothing. Like this is where I die. This is how it ends. No, that's cool. Yeah, I've heard great things of Oregon. I've never been, but you guys are both working in these facilities. I'm sure you guys bounce ideas off each other all the time. Did you guys haven't run into any interesting patients while you were up in Oregon?
Interesting is a good term. I will tell you one story and then we can be more clinical. But I did actually have a patient who, in the middle of her session, she was like doing an exercise, just dropped what she was doing and was like, I need to leave. My raccoon is getting out of my car. And she bolted out of the facility and her car was right outside the window. And I guess she has a pet raccoon who opens the window for the car and was climbing on top of the car. And I was like, I think that this is like a
Oregon moment.
Oregon moment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a good classic Oregon moment is also just like being in the skilled nursing facility. They're all relatively elderly patients, and like the Oregon community, the old style Oregon community are loggers. They got a logging history and a logging family and a lineage of loggers as well. And so you get these really just good, stubborn, tough old men.
Oh yeah.
Who really just don't want to give you, like You want to like just have them move, and they've been talking about how they've moved forever.
Right.
And then you
Move
get
your foot. It'd be like, you move your foot. I'm like, all right.
right. And like you get these wonderful, sweet women, but then you get also the brash women too. They probably had to play in the logging industry as well.
Mhm.
And so it was just cool. It's a cool, unique way to like see the same country, but a different culture within the country, and how everything kind of plays within communities. It was fun. Oregon was a good time.
Yeah, it was interesting for me. It's always interesting to see the different patient populations and like how different things are. I'm sure like Oregon's got to be completely different than Santa Barbara, or maybe there's some similarities there. But I know Buffalo for me and California are two completely different scenes when it comes to rehab.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good to see, like, I definitely think that rehab and physical therapy in general just is so different in different areas. And depending on, the population, the level of activity of the population, obviously like socioeconomic status, like all that kind of stuff. Like I think it's great to get experience in those different categories as well as not just difference in settings.
Did you see a lot of socioeconomic difficulties when you were in Oregon, or did you what was that like?
You
Yeah,
probably
I
did
did.
more than
Yeah.
me.
I think it was, you're going to find it just about anywhere. But, I think that, yeah, it was just tough. You kind of just feel for people, especially, I'm not going to necessarily say that I was in a really bad skilled nursing facility, but it wasn't, phenomenal either. The current place that Allie's at right now in Santa Barbara is,
it's like the most ideal
situation.
Yeah.
And
skilled nursing facility.
I had a different experience, and so
Yeah.
it's tough. You try to feel for the people. You don't try to hang anything over them by any means, but yeah.
So you guys are doing crazy experiences and meeting crazy people in Oregon. And what happens after the 13 weeks? Did you guys decide to stay, or did you leave? Like what happened?
So we definitely wanted to move on.
California.
Yeah, keep our plan going of bopping around from place to place. So we went down to the Bay Area was always our plan to go to next. We started applying for jobs, and we really lucked out. I actually applied for a job that it was an outpatient facility, Kaiser. And they were looking for a neuro and vestibular therapist. So that is right up my alley because I did one of my 6-month rotations in physical therapy school for my 3rd year was in a traumatic brain injury unit and patient rehab unit. And then I also did 6 months outpatient neuro and vestibular, and did a little bit of concussion within the concussion clinic there at the University of Pittsburgh, which was a great experience. And then when I was working at Moss Rehab in Philadelphia, I had the opportunity to go down to the Emory vestibular course. And so I did that back in 2019. So it was awesome that with my traveling, I was still able to use those vestibular skills and get more experience with the vestibular population. So I really lucked out in that regard. And so it worked out perfect because Kaiser needed someone ASAP. I got a phone call, and
You're lucky with the phone calls.
I know. I got a phone call. I was in the parking lot from my current job.
Not driving.
Not driving, parked in the car this time, but still in the car nonetheless. And I had the interview. It went well. It seemed like it was going to be a good fit. And she basically was like, all right, I'm going to talk to your recruiter. And she's like, are there any other like stipulations? And I was like, yes.
I have a +1.
I was like, my husband's also a physical therapist. And she was like, does he have a specialty? And I was like, yes, he's actually, orthopedics. And she was like, all right, I'm gonna give him a call in about 5 minutes.
Oh my god.
She did. She called me.
She called him in 5
Called me
minutes.
5
and
minutes, but
interviewed
I was in the
him.
other room.
Yeah. So so we like yet again lucked out with that job.
That one was a fun one because we finally got to work together.
It was
Yeah.
awesome working together. You like, I mean, obviously we were like a little nervous, like, is this gonna be too much? But honestly, it was really awesome. Like, I feel like there was almost like a comfort level that was like good about it. It also was a large clinic with like, I don't know, 40 physical therapists. So we kind of had our own space and everything. But yeah, it was really awesome. And of course, like COVID really put a spin on things about halfway through. And we're very thankful that we were able to fulfill our contract that we had.
Yeah.
We actually extended our contract right before COVID, and luckily we were able to continue with the extension, going straight into telehealth, which was
shout out to Kaiser for how they transitioned to telehealth so quickly. It was just pretty amazing how they pivoted. And Claudia Carhart, if you ever hear this, like you're a saint and a warrior. You were great.
She was amazing. She was the clinic manager there.
Yeah, the director of PT at the Kaiser. So it was a strong team, but we all kind of, that was at the time, obviously, Mike, that it was just it was the epicenter of COVID at the time. So we were all just so unsure of everything.
Yeah. And I remember the Kaiser that I was at, they were doing like, they're doing telehealth over the phone. Is that what you guys were doing too? Yeah.
We did phone visits and we did video visits.
Oh, okay.
And we probably had about like a half or 3/4 of the caseload that stayed on, and we just like weren't even billing.
Yeah,
we were just doing the visits and documenting, but we weren't billing at all.
Yeah, we would type it as if we knew what we would bill just in case, but I'm pretty sure Kaiser just ate all of that. Like they just did.
They were like, we'll deal with the billing later. We're getting our patients seen, which was pretty amazing to be able to witness. Yeah. And it was definitely a challenge treating, patients post CVA.
Oh my God.
Telehealth. Such a turn towards education for family members, caregivers, and self-management of symptoms and things, like that, and treating vestibular patients and trying to figure out how can I, just even trying to figure out with our patients, how can we objectively measure, their progress, is it adequate to assess a 5-time sit to stand via telehealth?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. I promise. Yeah, I swear, I'm sitting up and down.
Like, tell me when you're done. So it's just like kind of navigating some of those different things with even like neuro population versus treating pain, or
probably also why we weren't billing yet. CMS wasn't quite sure if that is actually justified.
Yeah,
right.
I tried my best, and I think that we did it. Like I truly think that in the situation, it was really good experience to have to switch gears and try to make it work in a completely different approach.
Definitely where communication skills come in handy.
Yes, absolutely.
And so when did your contract end?
April 18th.
April 18th. And then you guys bounced?
Yes. So our contract ended on April 18th, I guess. And 2 days later, we needed to be leaving our Airbnb that we were staying long-term in. And we weren't quite sure if we were going to go up to San Francisco or if we were going to go down to Santa Barbara.
Yes, so that's how I know it was April 18th, because I remember that leading into that Friday, we were like, okay, we have 1 week until we need to leave. And our Airbnb was done April 20th. Mm-hmm. And so we just said, all right, April 20th, we have to be somewhere else. And I remember going into that Friday and we still didn't have a job. And we figured, okay, we're either going to go, like I said, up north to San Francisco, and we had kind of a lead on something, and then south down to Santa Barbara, and we had kind of a small lead. I cold called a home health agency and said, hey, do you need PTs? And they just said, yeah. And that was it. And we were just like, okay, well, how do we move forward? And it was a Friday, obviously. It was Friday at like 5 p.m. She probably went home. And I'm
Right.
sitting here like, okay, well,
know
hello.
where to
Yeah, we're gonna be homeless in like 2 minutes. So like, could you please help
Yeah.
us out?
And so we ended up, extending our Airbnb one night, Monday morning. We just drove to Santa Barbara.
Yeah, wait,
Wow.
we did want to like our goal was to hopefully travel to Santa Barbara for our next rotation, and my best friend from college lives here in Santa Barbara. So we knew someone down here, so we decided to give it a shot. Came down here, realized the home health job did not end up playing out to be a full-time gig for either of us, and there are no travel jobs in sight.
Yeah, like I don't think you're putting enough weight onto what like March. Well, for me, March and like April, when you looked at from before COVID, you'd get like a plethora of lists of
Yeah.
places that you could go, things you could do for travel physical therapy. March rolled around, it was like one in the middle of Alabama. That
Yeah.
was it. And so like you guys had said, it trying to find a job was like, okay, I can kudos to you for cold calling. It's pretty awesome. And I can't imagine like again trying to find some place to live, because I lucked out with my place just to kind of stay stationary and figure it out. But you guys just were like, you know what, we're just gonna move and call and see what happens.
Yeah. And so yeah, we moved down here. We stayed with our friend for a week, and
Yeah, she was so nice to let us stay on her couch for 5 days. She had a roommate at the time who, especially during COVID, was super great of both of them to just be like, yeah, crash here, like figure it out.
we also were like extremely diligent about, like, at that time, obviously if any of us would have been exposed, we probably would have been exposed, but we were like wiping down everything and being really like social distancing and being like cautious in that regard,
taking it serious. Yeah.
um
And then
but
What
yeah,
happened with the home health?
the home health ended up being, do you know how to explain Feld care?
Yeah, so Felt Care was basically a third party home health. They would find the clients who would need the occasion, like PT, and get a random referral here and there. And then they would find a PT and match them together. So our jobs didn't work out because we were basically pay as you, or,
Independent contract work.
Yeah, just whatever came up.
And it just wouldn't have, it would have been like like we wouldn't be guaranteed visits, and it would be just maybe like a couple visits a week. So just not like
viable for 2 PTs full time.
Yeah. So we actually like started to go through like the onboarding process for them, and then we were like, this isn't for us, just based on that and some like research that we did into it. And then I literally like just went on to Google and was like,
cold call
physical therapy jobs in Santa Barbara, and I just started submitting my name for different places. And yeah, I got a call back from this nursing facility, which they were actually looking for a physical therapist for about like 4 or 5 months. So they were really in need, and it worked out great, and it's been a really good experience. I'm the only full-time physical therapist there. Our rehab director is also a physical therapist, so that's really nice, that she's able to kind of help me out a bit with caseload, because she's primarily doing all our admin stuff for us.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's like a really great setup. It's a tight-knit group of therapists. It's a really nice facility, and we have really great nursing staff that makes a huge difference, being able to communicate with them well, and like our CNAs are awesome. So everyone's been like really, it's challenging in this setting during COVID, I can only imagine, what ICUs and hospitals and things like that are like. But for us, it's just challenging seeing the patients, not having the same interaction that they normally would with their families or caregivers, or, their decrease in activity level. So I'm hopeful that, with vaccines and everything, we can start at least working towards improving upon those aspects and getting some of these patients out more of their houses, and these residents out of their houses. It's just the sedentary, effects of COVID have really taken a toll on this population.
Yeah, not being able to go literally anywhere is super. I mean, for even people who are young, is super difficult. But for people who are older, I know my grandfather. He's literally just told my mother, like, I'm gonna go outside and do what I want because I'm not gonna spend like the rest of my life just like chilling in my house. And he wears masks and does everything he needs to do to protect himself. But it's just it's difficult to tell somebody in their 80s to be like, yeah, like you need to stay inside for the rest of your life now. Like they want to go out and do things, and having that psychological toll is very, I think, it weighs more heavily sometimes than even like the COVID risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it with patients who are even have memory deficits.
Social isolation. It was already a big problem.
Yeah,
they kind of isolate people in nursing homes sometimes. But back to you, Anthony. You the home health didn't work out. Allie finds a job. What are your next steps? You cold calling everybody?
Yeah, I get a little vacation. I get a little vacation while I cold call people. Yeah, so I put my resume out. I was kind of going through the motions, but if it were going to be a long-term thing, it wasn't going to happen overnight. It wasn't just going to be a quick travel call and then you get the job. So I was kind of all hands on deck trying to figure out what the next steps really could look like. And I went even through the process of kind of going through entrepreneurial things. I reached out to Luna, tried to figure out even how could Luna be viable in a new location.
Yeah.
I talked to their director of recruiting, even thought about getting on the admin side of things or like the business side of things. And so
you didn't tell me about this.
Yeah, if Khan is now listening, Khan, still open.
You were pretty passionate about Luna there.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure things out, and I always like to daydream a little bit and think of what the next big steps could be. So I kind of put some of my skills to use. At the time, I was actually I had just applied to be a mentor for the North Carolina APTA's North Carolina chapter has an early professional mentor group. And so I had been just matched with a brand new mentee and things were going well there. So I started like really kind of deep diving and saying, like I actually really enjoy the thought of being a professional mentor. Maybe there could be something from a physical therapy side of things. The Level Up initiative was also kind of like still building up. And so I signed up for that, was kind of going through that.
I did that as well.
And so, yeah, it was really like a good time, the 2 months that, before it took me to kind of really land the job that I'm in or the position that I'm in now. Those 2 months were incredible in the sense that I like was really able to reflect and kind of think about what life as a PT should be like, what life as a person kind of like, because I've always went through just like planning from residency and to travel every 3 months. What's the next step? And then started really kind of that deep dive. It was fun. And so I feel a lot better for it. I felt more grounded when I took my current job. One of the previous mentors I had always talked about this one kind of thing, like non-negotiables. What are your non-negotiables when it comes to your next job or your next friendship relationship? Like what are the things that would really cross the line in terms of your values, your personal qualities? And so I went into the job kind of thinking about those non-negotiables and thinking about what I need from a mentor, a job, a career. And for the first time, I was really able to take all of those kind of like thoughts of what could go next, after the residency, and really kind of solidify it into what I'm in now. So that's where
Tell them a little bit about what you're doing at Variant.
Yeah, so Variant Training Lab in Santa Barbara is the place that I'm transitioning towards. The outpatient orthopedic clinic is a sister clinic that's all in network, and Variant Training Labs is an out of network training facility. So it's a cash pay membership based model that has concierge physical therapy services alongside of it. So out of network physical therapy can be provided, but there's also a gym aspect to where they have a biomechanics lab, and every member goes through a 1 hour session in the biomechanics lab, 1 hour session with a physical therapist, and then a breakdown session with our performance trainers to give them a unique program designed especially for the needs of that person in front of you. So if they're symptomatic, they have issues, we can not only treat it, but then we can work on some of the other things on the side. If they have goals of just getting faster, bigger, stronger, then we can really gravitate kind of our rep schemes and our conditioning specific to that. And so luckily I was able to kind of latch on at a really great time where some of my coworkers are just really in a growth phase of the company. And so I kind of just was brought on, and now I'm helping out in a pretty significant way. I'm the lab manager of the director of the lab services at the biomechanics lab. So feeling good about it.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think there's always been especially in the orthopedic setting for sports, there's been almost like a fall off with some of the athletes where it's like, okay, I can swing a golf club, but my performance is like still crap. I can't do it the way that I used to do it before. Or, you get the check boxes after you do ACL rehab, but you're not, back to 100%. You can sprint, you can cut, but you can't do it like you used to, and you're not as confident, and you need that strengthening protocol after. And that sounds like Variant is what can kind of provide in that almost like a niche market of people who they're good, but they're not great, and they want to bring their level from good to great.
Exactly. Great book, by the way. It's exactly why Variant was really created, was in the sense that when in-network third-party payers start deeming when discharge is more appropriate, you really lose that top end, that the prior level of function. If that's the only standard, then how do we get back to better, right? Good to great. And so that's exactly what we're really hoping to do, is kind of take some of these people who might be falling through the cracks 1, 2, 3 months, or even 1, 2, 3 years later after the fact, and getting them back to actually reaching the goals that we initially try and set when it comes to PT.
Are you trying to establish Variant as a covered by insurance? And you said it's all out of pocket right now, right? Are you trying to establish a network where insurance would possibly cover it, where you can draw a line of like, they had an injury like 3 years ago, they didn't get the proper rehab, maybe they can still get covered? Or is that not something in the radar right now?
It's probably not in the radar for one of two reasons. One, it's Santa Barbara, so usually, there is the people who are willing to put in a little bit more of their out-of-pocket expense, they'll likely do it. But two, there is that just growing trend naturally that third-party payers aren't really giving the best utilization of services. And so people are now, even just, people who may not be well off or really well, affluent, and starting to invest in themselves prior to injury or post injury. But diving more, I think there's more studies now even coming out, just like millennials or the newer age are starting to understand it's important to put healthcare first, and almost first and foremost around the similar sides of like being self-sufficient in their investments, or more financially literate. Like, I didn't know any of that when I was going through 18, 20 years old, but like a lot of those younger people are doing that. And I think that trend is moving forward.
Well, the younger people aren't the millennials. We are the millennials.
We're getting old now, man.
All these young kids these days.
No, I agree. And you said financial literacy. I've had conversations with other clients and colleagues about financial literacy is the word that really kind of sparks my interest, and rather talking financial literacy, talking exercise and fitness literacy. And kind of one of my motivations for this podcast was to make it so it's more available and easy to communicate and educate people on some of the things and nuances that people don't really talk about all that often. And like money, exercise is certainly something that can be put to the wayside and also isn't talked about enough. If you have a conversation with one of your friends or a family member, say, oh, looks like you lost a couple pounds. Oh yeah, I've been doing this bike thing. And that's about the farthest that conversation goes, other than, maybe a few more other things of like where you do the spin class that you do every weekend. So I think having a platform, even normalizing conversations around exercise, is super important. And again, people definitely need to realize how important it is to financially invest in their own health, because later on it's just going to pay dividends. Yeah. You're working there now. You guys are loving Santa Barbara. What's next for you guys? Are you guys just chilling, or is this a permanent thing? Like, I know jobs are popping up for travel. So are we liking Santa Barbara so much, or are we going to pick up all our items and wherever you left them?
We're actually thinking about shipping our items from North Carolina.
Oh.
So we didn't actually close the loop. So after those 5 days of living on our friend's couch, we ended up being her roommate. So she was our friend. She's Allie's best friend, and then a bridesmaid in our wedding. So we're actually living with her in that place right now. So when her roommate moved out a month later, so we had 1 month where we just lived in a month-to-month place, one bedroom apartment, and now when that roommate moved out, we moved in, and so now we are likely going to be looking for our own place here come June and shipping out all of our things.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, like I was saying, like people always ask me, like, oh, are you going to travel until you find a place that you want to stay? And I always was like, nope, I've got my plan. I want to travel to X, Y, and Z and then like end up here. And it's like crazy that it actually happened for us. And I mean, who knows what would have happened if 2020 did not go out.
Yeah, so let's leave them with our initial plan. What were we planning on doing? Oregon, and then Santa Clara to Santa Barbara to New York.
We wanted to go back east and do New York City.
Yeah, because you guys were, last time I remember we went to Mission Peak, and you guys were talking to somebody after somebody was pregnant, right? Or engaged. Yeah.
They're getting married in June.
Oh, nice.
Good memory. Yeah, that was fun. So yeah, they live in New York City. So we were like, oh, we have got family in New York City. Would be fun for us to do. And then we wanted to maybe go up and do like Boston, like New England area, just to see different parts of the country. So we were planning on like traveling for probably like a year and a half, 2 years. And then ultimately we wanted to end up in North Carolina.
Yeah, slowly make our way back down. So maybe like another rotation, for some reason, Virginia and Maryland have really good pay. And so we were like, well, why not? That sounds pretty great to us.
Right, yeah. And you have family in North Carolina, right? That's why you guys were kind of ultimately going down to North Carolina.
Yeah. So at this point, we kind of don't have any plans of leaving Santa Barbara. We're just gonna kind of keep going with what we're doing. I mean, his job is like a really good opportunity for him, and I'm really enjoying my job. So, I think that as of right now, we have no plans to leave, but maybe someday we'll end up venturing back. I don't know. The West Coast really stole our hearts.
It'll all work out.
As you're talking, Allie, Anthony's just like,
yeah,
like we're not moving.
It'll all work out. That's
just
what you keep telling yourself.
Once COVID calms down, though, we would love to have you down here, and definitely we need to make it back up to the Bay Area at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I was definitely gonna say that California is certainly a great place to live, and it really does surprise you with how many opportunities there are here and things you can do, and just also the weather. I mean, it's like 60 degrees every day here, other than the summer, so it's pretty fantastic.
Definitely.
Now, did you get vaccinated yet?
I have not. I have not. One, because I am just ridiculously busy. But two, I feel like there's a lot of in Santa Clara County. They're finally setting up the Levi Stadium to be like the epicenter for people getting vaccinated in Santa Clara County. However, if you go to like the Santa Clara County website, it's difficult. You can't even like if you go through all the way to the end of March, you can't book an appointment. So, in the midst of being busy and otherwise, you know, I know that I'm not in a very high risk group, and I'm very careful just because I do have patients who are in their 90s and so on and so forth. I'm not, you know, jumping at the gun to go and get it because I'm not in a high risk group, but nonetheless, I do feel like I'm going to get it eventually. It's just a matter of I feel like there's a lot more people who need it more than me, you know. Did you guys get it?
Yes, we did. I guess we weren't required to get it, but
Sorry, I think you're covering your mic.
we weren't required to get it at work, but at this point, you know, pretty much everyone has. And of course, nothing's changed. Like we still follow all the same protocols with wearing our masks and everything. So, but yes, we were able to get it. They first vaccinated everyone who was a resident or worked in the skilled nursing facility. And I believe that we were the first locations in Santa Barbara County to get the vaccine.
Okay.
So I got mine back the beginning of the year, like January 5th or 4th. I got my first dose, and then I got my second dose the end of January. Not to dive too much into detail with this, but Anthony and I actually had COVID back in December.
Wow.
Which, yeah, that's, you know, we could talk about that for a while. We were fine. We were good. We had mild symptoms, recovered fine. But yeah, we were exposed actually through our roommate. She had traveled for Thanksgiving, and so we had it. I was still able to get the vaccine. There was talk about waiting 90 days, but that never actually became a requirement. So yeah, we got our vaccines, and he just got his today.
I got my second one today.
Nice. Feeling okay?
So good. So far, so good. Yeah.
No lobsters coming out of your ears?
No.
Yeah. We actually felt a little bit, we think we felt sick. So we did end up getting kind of like flu-like symptoms after the first one, but we think it was because we had COVID within that month. But Allie didn't feel too bad after the second. Hopefully, you know.
Yeah, I felt fine after my second one. So.
Cool. Well, listen, I appreciate you guys coming on. I know it's getting late, but I do want to kind of close out on perhaps I know that your plan for travel didn't obviously turn out as well as it did, but you guys ended up in the place that you wanted to be. And I think that's more important. You guys figured out, you know, along the way that travel was kind of an opportunity for you guys to figure out where you wanted to be, where you wanted to go. For people who whether it's student PT or a current PT who's doing maybe a clinic, what kind of advice would each of you give to them? Maybe one thing to keep in mind moving forward. Would it be the recruiter, or would it be just kind of be as free as you can? Like what's one piece of advice that you'd say you'd leave with somebody who wants to do travel in the near future?
I think that probably my biggest advice is looking at those three things that I talked about. What your priority is. Is your priority location? Is your priority setting? Or is your priority pay? And allowing that to kind of be your driving factor. Making sure you are flexible, but also like advocate for yourself with your recruiter and with what you want. I think it's a different world than when we were initially starting out in travel, but I think it is, improving. So I just encourage people to get out there and, apply for jobs that even if you don't feel like you're the most qualified for, if you don't feel comfortable, see if there is any form of mentorship that can be provided, and, just get out there and do it.
Great one.
Stop that, Anthony.
No, I don't think I can. I go back and forth on a lot of things. I think it was really travel PT can be a lot of great things, but I also think that if you go in the mindset of you're looking for one thing or you think it's going to be, potentially bad or not the setting that you wanted, like you make it exactly what it is. And if you can just kind of understand that you are filling a position that maybe no one wants, like there's still patients at the day in and day out, you're treating patients. Make it something that's really important to them, and you're going to have a great time. And I think adding in the prioritizations that, or the priorities that Allie was talking about, is going to help you get there. But like, keep it all in perspective. You're
Mhm.
gaining experience. You're only going to be better for that experience. And if you just keep that patient in mind, that's what you're doing it for.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't said it better myself. Well, thank you guys seriously so much for coming on, and hopefully I get to see you guys soon, whether it be in Santa Barbara or you guys come up here.
Yeah,
Yeah, looking
absolutely.
forward to it.
Keep in touch.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, see you, Mike.